Hello everyone. As per usual, Tuesday we did a preview of the week, have a little look at what teams got to do to go into the week with another win. This one only 6 games, so a little bit shorter. I went on a massive thing about the whole week, and the last video is the longest power ranking one we've ever done. I also talked a lot about this on the ELF Live. Did a bit of analysis on each. You kind of have to watch both of them just to try and get my whole feelings, because I couldn't go on for an hour and a half on my own show. But me and Jamal chopped it up. Nick was on a temporary ban after some of his takes. I was let off with a warning because some of my takes weren't great either. But this one should be good. It's a good week. There's some good matchups, some interesting ones. A lot of individual matchups are very interesting as well. I'm going to try a little bit of a different format with this one because I was watching some of it back during the editing last week, and I was like, I want to get my face more on there because these ones generally do less views than the power rankings. I think it's because some of the visuals are a little less interesting. So I'm going to try and jump back and forth between the keys to success tile and my very devilishly handsome face. So if you guys like that format a little bit more, jump over. If you missed the streams, Ricardo, obviously everyone knows Ricardo, a friend of the channel. He's on all the ELF Live comment sections, and he's a good friend of everyone in the community. He just put up a whole hour. He sent it over to me, 10 gigabytes, an hour and a half nearly, of the stream, cut up into the highlight sections, all the tape from the actual videos that I watched. So go check that out. It's on the channel. Can't thank him enough for that. He definitely deserves a lot of praise. So I've been going for nearly 2 minutes. Let's actually get into the week previews. Week 11. And it is getting hotter and hotter in its playoff picture. A lot of points are going to be scored, I think, this week, because teams are going to try and separate themselves. We'll start with the first game. Maybe not the most exciting game, but it was the first game. It really was. It's very close, and people didn't expect it to be, including myself. But we had the 10-0 Vienna Vikings versus the 1-8 Helvetic Mercenaries. We'll start with Vienna. Don't start slow. We know that Ben Holmes is a slow starter. He throws a pick to get started. This has kind of been established by now as quite obvious. Last game against Prague, the first drive of the whole quarter, he had 2 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pass for 2 yards. He starts slow. He throws that pick. He needs to click after that pick, and he does end up having good games. The record for Vienna is 10-0, and they've played, I believe, 1 winning team. So they've had an easy schedule. They really have. But defensively, they are a very solid team. But they need to be aware of Robinson, because Robinson is dangerous everywhere. We've seen how good he has been in the last couple of seasons in Mexico or in Europe, and he was back with vengeance in the last game. Great game against the Raiders, against a pretty underrated secondary. They do have some decent players in that secondary of the Raiders, and he is very dangerous. He's going to be the main guy. He is one of the best receivers in the league. Just as soon as he steps foot in the league, he's dangerous on short, medium, deep routes. He has great hands. He has a great route tree, very developed, and they need to keep an eye on him. They need to maybe even man him up or double man him, because he's that dangerous. And Spiller is very good, but Robinson is the fucking dude. They need to also keep working these zones. We saw last game they picked apart Prague with the zone coverage. Horn is too fast. Torre is too good of a receiver to just let him sit wherever he is. And I think the Helvetic do not have as good defense as they did earlier in the season. They've taken a slump in terms of how they've performed. Maybe because they've made some rather erratic releases. But they need to, Vienna can just pick apart in his own coverage. They have such phenomenal receivers. Schultz has been a revelation this year as another option. When Boers went down, Torre has stepped up, Schultz has stepped up, and they've got a really good offensive unit going on there. For Helvetic, Clayton's building a connection. He only played 1 game, of course. He got picked off quite early, but I think that was just him kind of finding his rhythm. It's still early in the game. Robinson went over 100 yards. So did Spiller. Spiller got that fumble at the end, but he went over 100 yards and had a good game overall. That's very important for Clayton to have 2 receivers that he knows are reliable. We didn't see much else from anyone else in the receiving game, but those 2 really did step up, and I think that he will have that connection with those 2, and that is extremely important for him. The D needs to clutch up on the run, and Cozy tore him apart on that 4th quarter last game. Hasselvanta gave him a lot of problems as well. Bonatti gave them problems when he was on, but Hasselvanta actually took the majority of the carries, and he's a backup running back, and he gave them a lot of issues. They need to clutch up on that, especially on 3rd and 4th down, and Cozy was able to make a few of those down the stretch in the 4th quarter when they had a little bit of an opportunity on these 3rd downs, and Cozy would just run the ball, and they would get 1st down, and then ultimately ice the game. So they need to clutch up on that, especially with people like Bajarian running around, and Schultz, who's played a lot more last game at running back as well. is a big issue, and I think they're going to need to address that if they want to have any success in this game. Press Torre off Horn. Here's controversial, right? So Torre does not get pressed a bunch. I'm still in the process of making a video. I've done all the tape watching and such, but he does not face a lot of press coverage. He is a lesser experienced receiver than Reece Horn. I want to see people get physical with Torre. I want to see how he deals with that. Can Helvetic do it? I don't know. But let's see if they can. Horn, on the other hand, is one of the most experienced receivers in the league. He's leading the league in yards. He's an amazing receiver. He's played wherever you want to say. He's played in the NFL. He's played in the XFL as well. He's very experienced. If you press him with not an elite corner, he's just going to blow right past them. Double him. Press Torre, see how he deals with it, because Torre's release isn't elite, and I think that they may have some success there. Ultimately, I think Helvik can score. I think the Vienna can score more. I think the run game is going to be a big part of this. I'm going to go for 40-21 in favour of the Vikings. Another matchup I think people were perhaps sleeping on is Hamburg 2-6 versus Madrid Bravos, who is 6-2. Now, of course, you see the records, and it doesn't look like it should be close, but I think it might be a little bit closer than we think. And of course, I know Nick's going to be happy about that. I know he's not the biggest person on the Madrid hype train, but let's start with Hamburg. Late game mistakes. Big time. We saw Fulford in the last game. He looked good until the fourth quarter. And then he looked fine in the start of it. But then when it came down to the stretch, down 10 points, immediate pick 6, gets back on the field, down 17, immediate pick on the same play, same position, same concept, just 1 inch shorter away from being a pick 6. You can't really let that happen. Even not just on offense, not just being picking on Fulford. They also had some busted coverages. It was completely wide fucking open. So it's late game mistakes on offense and defense that kind of cost them the game. It was even that PI on 4th down and 1. They go for it. But 26-23 was the scoreboard. Frankfurt go for it. PI. It wasn't even needed. They didn't even need to get the PI. I know in hindsight 2020 and 1, I might not have seen the ball, but he didn't need to get that PI. They get a fresh set of downs. And then they score, like a little bit afterwards. They could have very much won this game against Frankfurt, and they didn't, and then fall to 2-6. They need to be more effective at crashing the run. Against Frankfurt, 2 players go over 100 yards, including Sandro, which is no shaming, Sandro's an elite back, but also McKay went over 100 yards. And a lot of that was on 3rd and 4th down, clutch runs, bad tackling by the linebackers, in all honesty. The D-line didn't look as good as we previously seen it. They also need to get up early. We saw that they can score. We've seen with Fulford look like really good in the last game, although we would at the end didn't look great. But we've seen that they can score. Seen Duncan struggle when he's down. We've seen Duncan's decision making get worse when he's losing. Maybe not so much in this game, but the game before he played all right, even when losing. But it's been a factor. It's been a factor in Warsaw. It's been a factor in Madrid. So if they can get him uncomfortable with that Jack Jackson pass rush and with the other options they have at rushing the passer and making people uncomfortable, could potentially make Duncan uncomfortable and make some turnovers happen. Now Madrid, starting off, short to Justice may be a problem. Tor and Justice kind of got a little bit more involved in the last game as we expected them to kind of ease into it. Obviously, of course, the mid-season silence, so it takes sometimes a couple of weeks for them to get into the flow. They struggled with Carlos Hill a lot. And Tor and Justice and Carlos Hill are not crazy dissimilar in their rack ability. So I think that he may be an issue if they're not going to come down short in these routes and just let them get over 100 yards. Tor and Justice is dangerous. I know they're not built crazy similar, but he's a dangerous receiver. We saw that in the last game. Cannot just let him get over the top of people. Can't just let him rack up yardage and get underneath routes and extend the plays. He might be an issue for them. I think that he may have a pretty good game. They all seem to be aggressive at the catch point, which they were. They keep doing it. They were great against Isaiah Weed. They forced 4 picks. All of them were very impressive interceptions. All of them, they were forcing him into this congested area and making him throw into bad decision making. We've just seen Fulford make bad decisions by throwing into shots that aren't there. We could potentially see that again. And Madrid have one of the more underrated defensive back units in the league. Lender's much improved in his coverage. Array can pick the ball off if he needs to. Vera's one of the best players when it comes to that. They've even got Manning coming in, who's not as good as a ball hawk as Emery, but is still a good player. Medina looked good, and he could be an option. If Obi's a little bit banged up, needs a bit of a rest, Molina kind of looked good in the last game. You know what I mean? He ran the ball well. He went over 100 yards, I believe. Looked good in the passing game as well, so he can affect that. I've said about them lacking a second receiver option. It hasn't burst out on to be an elite second receiver or third receiver. I'm not saying Molina is that, but I'm saying he could be a relief option, a change of pace, and ease a little bit on Obi, because Obi's very good, but you don't want to run him into the ground to get him hurt if you're going to go into the playoffs. Ultimately, I do favour Madrid quite, not like crazy heavy, but I think it should be quite comfortable if they do everything right. I'm going to go for a 35-14 score in favour of Madrid, but it could be a little bit closer if Hamburg do what they need to do. I won't spend a bunch of time on this one because it should be quite obvious. We got Surge versus Seaman. This one should be not a crazy competitive game to be frank. So for the Surge, they need to get the offense clicking again. The offense did not look completely comfortable in the last game against the Dragons. And the Dragons are the Dragons, so we know what they're about at this point. They didn't look massively comfortable. Riley didn't have the best of games. I know he got an interception, but then that interception turned into a safety when he went out in zone and then slipped, so it wasn't like the biggest deal in the world. And their special teams played really well, and their defense played really well. But they just need to get that clicking again. I think they kind of came in a little bit rusty again. They've had such an easy schedule. They've been able to do that. Fettig is a Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner, and Salem is reckless. So I think he's going to be able to get a pick, maybe even multiple. Fetting is one of the best players in the league. He's an all-star, and he's still somehow slept on. He could be a real player for Defensive Player of the Year voting. He might even be top 3. Honestly, it's him, Kitchens, and Wendland, in my opinion. And I think he's going to be a big one. And with Salem's very erratic, free-fire, gunslinger style, I think that he could be a real impact player in this game. Most importantly, don't slip up. This is Milan. This should be an easy game. You've got an easy schedule. You don't want to slip up and make the playoffs as a 2 seed and lose yourself a bye week. Because currently, they're looking like an undefeated year. And it's pretty likely they're going to get an undefeated year. And that means they're going to get a bye week. Because, obviously, Ryan lost. And that is extremely important for them. For Milan, wild style of quarterback play. It didn't work much. It had its moments. And that's what the big thing is. It had its moments. If they can capitalize on that, reduce the interceptions, because he threw quite a lot of them, especially in the fourth quarter, they could get some points on the board potentially. But the D needs to contain a run, because the Surge running game has been kind of slower throughout the year, but against Dragons, it was fucking just 10, 15 yard gains constantly. It was dominant. It was easy for them. I don't think any running back got over 10 yards. Yeah, all of them were quite close to getting 100 yards total. So less touches and a lot of yards. I think that's going to be a problem for them. And that wasn't even their starting guys for the majority of the game. They need to find a way to contain the receivers. You got Meyer, you got Geyer, you got Stewart. And you got Steigold, and you got other options as well. Dragons kind of contain them a little bit. Not for the whole game, but there were some instances where Riley stepped back, he's got a clean pocket, and no one was open. And this is the Dragons. This isn't a good DB core. I think they did a good job. Not for the whole game, of course. They still put up 71 points in total, but a lot of that was on special teams. You need to learn from that. And ultimately, I don't think they're going to be able to do much. I think it's going to be 48-9 in favor of the Surge. It shouldn't be too close. Surge should take a pretty dominant win. Alright, halfway point. Frankfurt Galaxy. Bit of a weird team coming into this. Cologne Centurions. Bit of a weird team going into this. Both of these 3-5, and of course the big storyline here was Cologne actually won this game in the first time round, which was not what people were expecting. However, I think it's going to be a bit of a different time this way around. So, for Frankfurt Galaxy, I think McKay needs to shorten up the vision a little bit. I mentioned when he came into the league that he has really good deep passing and he can hit most spots in the field, but he neglects the short and intermediate routes. And we saw a little bit more of that. He threw that pick when he tried to go outside. That wasn't a very good throw. But he does look first for the deep throws. He doesn't look as much in the short and intermediate as I'd like him to do. I think he is a good pocket passer. Some people said I don't really like McKay that much. I really like McKay. I think he could be a really good player in this league, and I said that when he came in. But I want him to allow him to sit in the pocket a little bit more. He ran really, really well. And I was questioning the running ability and why they were running him so much. But he did run really well in the last game. But I still want to see them more use him as a passer. They also need to congest the middle on defense. We saw Isaiah Weed do a lot of picks against Madrid, 4 to be precise. He's thrown picks all season. I think, and of course I made the short about him being a fun quarterback. He is a fun quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he does throw a lot of picks, especially on contested areas where he's trying to force the ball into his receivers. He doesn't have Jared Allman. He has a lot of injuries. And I think that the middle of the field is going to be a highly active area. And they have good players that can pick the ball off in that field. So excited to see what they get out of that. Outside run is also the way. Will Lytle is an underrated defensive lineman. I've liked Will Lytle since he came in. I was a big fan of his coming in. But he's an interior D lineman, so he doesn't get as much praise. He is a good player. And Sandro is going to be a big part of this, naturally. I think they'd be better off running it outside towards Steven Nilsson's side on the left tackle. They have slower linebackers on the outside compared to Sandro. And I think that would be a big part of that. I think you can find a lot of space out there. And I think we're in for another big game for Sandro if they do it. Of course, they're going to run at the middle a little bit. But I think outside they'll have a lot more opportunities. Cologne don't need to force the pass. I know they're a run team. I know their star running back is injured for the year. But if the pass ain't there and it's pass and play, just take off, man. Like, you can do that. You're fine. You're a good runner. I think that they'll be able to do that a little bit, but as I have my doubts. Rotate the backs and get big if you want to put Emil Fuchs or Tawani or any of the backup running backs in. You may as well just put another tight end in. You've got Robin, who's a tight end. He's a good tight end. He's a good blocker. I've seen him block in person. Get big. Put multiple running backs in. Have a fullback. Have a lead blocker. I think they can work. Like, just because you got starting running back injured doesn't mean you need to abandon the whole game plan and whole offensive identity. They also need to force shots from McKay to Harris' side. Called him poison because if you touch him, you die. And of course, he's been great this season. Had a little bit of a quiet game in the last one against Madrid, but he's still an elite cornerback. McKay goes deep, has thrown picks this season, and I think that he could be a player that gets one. Ultimately, I think it should be more comfortable for Frankfurt this time around. They look better than they did the first time they played Cologne. I think McKay will be looking for revenge. I think it'll be 29-13 in favour of the Galaxy. Now, this one's kind of a long-awaited matchup. Of course, we saw the first game. Paris took a massive lead, ended up kind of nearly blowing the lead, and Berlin did a weird thing where they're usually quite poor in the second half. They ended up being really good in the second half. Not something we're used to seeing with this team. But we'll start with Paris. Get the run game going. It's been slow the last couple of weeks, especially against Ryan. It was a big problem that they could not threaten Ryan with the run. Ryan were able to play a lot more freely on defense, and they never really got started. I think all of their running backs got under 50 yards, which isn't great. They had about 79, I believe it was, total yards on the day, so not a very good running game for them at the moment. Augmont had a couple of injuries. They've had Volumbo coming at the running back, and he was good. He got a 100-yard game. He also had a fumble issue in that game as well. So they need to get it cooking because Edwards can't just do it on his own. He is the majority of their rushing yards, and it's not even very close. He's been a big threat for them on the run game. They can't just run on just him. Back to what got us here. Short, intermediate passing is what got us here. And Edwards using his running ability also got us here. They threw a lot more deep and were trying to push the envelope a lot more against Ryan because they were down by so much. I don't think they'll have that problem against Berlin. I think they play a lot more freely. They can do what got them to the dance. Hopefully they'll have a bit more support in the run game. Their offensive line as well will be a little bit better because they kind of did get some problems with Ryan. And I think they should be okay. Moving Beard down to corner. They have very clear injuries at the cornerback position. Move Masera Beard back down to corner. I think that's why he's a little bit better, where he can play that zonal role. At safety, I don't think he's as good. He's a good safety. I don't want people to say he's not, because he is. But he's better at corner. He got a Defensive Player of the Year at corner. He can affect Sullivan a lot more from that position, I think. He'll be closer on the line of scrimmage, so he can affect the run game a little bit more. Because we saw that the Ryan Fire receivers given a lot of issues. I've said before, and they kind of did move a little bit over at some points during the game, but I think he got to start corner. I don't think he gets out of that cornerback role. Whether they're manning him up with Jackson, or zoning him up with Jackson, or with Robin, you kind of got to get him somewhere, and I think corner's the best place for him. For Berlin, bye week is hopefully heals up some receivers. I talked to people with Berlin that I'm close with, and they were talking about Bias's injury and with Robin injury, and just the amount of hits they've had at receiver has been unfortunate. They've just had a bye week. Hopefully they'll be back to full strength. Tackle Edwards this time. They had so much penetration on the line in the last game against Paris. They just could not bring him down. It was a big issue because he was just escaping, getting 10-yard runs on key third and like 15s. He was still getting big runs. That was alarming to watch. And they need to capitalize on that. If they make 3 more sacks in that game, they might just win. But they didn't. They lost. And I think that's going to be a big part they take out of that, of the things they need to improve on. They need to lock in quick and for 60 minutes. Normally, they're really good in the first half, really shit in the second. Against Paris, they're really shit in the first, really good in the second, which is odd. It's a 60-minute game, man. Got to lock in for all of it. I know you've got injuries. I know you've got all these problems. I know you've got coming off a bye week. Hopefully well rested, but might not be. It's a 60-minute game. At least show the consistency, because some of the play calling on the offense or defense has been really poor in some of these situations. And I think they need to just, that's the big thing with them, innit? You cannot talk about Berlin without talking about the blown leads. Ultimately, close game. I think it's probably the closest game we'll have this week. I'm going to go for 28-20 in favour of Paris. Berlin have got a tough schedule. Paris have got a tough schedule too. And I think they should be able to get it done. Paris are in a playoff run. And I think they're going to want to make a statement here after getting beaten by Rhine. The last game, I won't keep you long for this one. Prague Lions versus Munich Ravens. This one should be quite easy for them. We'll start with Prague. Receivers actually got space really early on Vienna, and they looked pretty good. Perkins was able to find them. Not all the time because the offensive line's still poor, but the receiving game for Prague was on. Don't get it twisted just because they got absolutely blown out. Go back and watch some of the receivers. They were creating space. They have a good receiver core. Redeem's a good player. Lucas Kadlets, of course, Joseph Janota, and Adam Zaleka can all affect in the passing game. And they were getting really open against a very good Vienna defense. Z is able to get runs and big ones. In the last game, Adam Zaleka had a few big stretches of runs. He had 3 or 4 that went over 20 yards and explosive plays. But he's been inconsistent because of bad offensive line. He had some injuries last year that he might be still healing from, I'm not sure. But he has had injury issues in his career so far. He can break these big runs. He absolutely can. The offensive line just needs some more support, and he is a very good player. The zone got picked apart. I still don't know why they're playing Daniel Wright at corner. He's a fucking safety. Please stop playing him at corner. He won a national fucking championship with Alabama as a safety. And they're playing him at corner. I don't get it. It's silly. The zone got absolutely shredded against Vienna in the last game, and it didn't work. They didn't need to tighten up the zone coverage or play man because it wasn't good enough. For Munich, another very surprising game for them against Milan. The swing passes were working really, really well. Tomiwa and Rodney both got a lot of usage in their swing passes, and Stanley, of course, probably the MVP of the week for me. Him and Jadrian. He was absolutely outstanding. He's going to be a big part of this. I still think he's going to get over 1,000 yards potentially. He has entered into the league late, and he's rising up those boards. 4 touchdowns in the last game was spectacular. Chad's hot. He looked very good in the last game, but he let slip at the end of the half. He forced 2 interceptions at the end of the half, trying to get balls into spaces that weren't there. Kind of soured his stat line a little bit. Still an MVP of the week kind of performance, got 6 touchdowns, but did get 2 picks. That's a big deal. Because Prague and great turnovers. Their defense gets tired because their offense is not on the field for very long. The defense kind of gets overused and they're not able to get much. But we could see another Alexander Volkovic play here because he's made a bit of a reputation about getting these plays. The D was lax to start the game in Milan. Milan were moving in the run game and in the pass game, and this isn't a very good offense in Milan, so it was kind of odd. Later in the game, they locked up, got multiple interceptions, started really getting physical with Salem on the run, and it ended well for them. Against Prague, I don't really think they're going to have any issues. I'm going to go for a 14 for Prague, 54 for the Munich Ravens. Shouldn't be close, just kind of got to build up some hype for it, don't you? And just like that, we are done. Let me know how you felt this format. It took a little bit longer to edit, but I kind of enjoyed it more because it's more interactive. You can kind of see me talking about things. I can use it for some shorts when I get a video uploaded. But I feel like it was a little bit better, a little bit more engaging. Because like I said, I was watching some of it back when I uploaded it. I was like, it's a little bit boring. So I wanted to, improve the content for you guys after you showed such support with the streams and upcoming videos and stuff like that. So yeah, let me know how you found it. Tune in this week for the streams. Obviously, I'll be pretty much every weekend making notes and stuff, and we got a very good community. I'll leave the Discord in the link in the description. Got some good creators in there. Big weeks ahead, should be fun. Torre video hopefully soon, some short content coming out over the next couple of days. Today's Tuesday, so it should be all good. ELF live on Thursday as per usual. Hopefully Nick will be back as well, so it should be good. And yeah, let me know how you're doing. Let me know if you want me to do certain things. Talk to me in the comment section. I'll always reply when I can. I'll see you next time. See you maybe Thursday on a Torre video. Friday maybe for a Torre video. We'll see how it goes. Stay sharp. See you later. Goodbye.